Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. I'm Greg Christ. That on the other side is Frank Fear. Got to point the opposite way. And Frank,
that's right.
yeah. And we welcome you to the show tonight. We want to make sure that we always tell you to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. That helps us to keep up this work that we're doing. We also want to send out a special thank you right off the bat to our, I guess we're calling them assistant producers, Mike Dunlap and, of course, Mark Parsons, who always are so helpful in getting our guests for us and getting this all put together. And thank you, Frank, especially for all the work that you do on this. I know you spend an inordinate amount of time on it. I get lots of emails with lots of information. There's our two helpers, and Mike's actually going to join us tonight. We'll get him on here in just a little bit, but Mark Parsons, Mike Dunlap, again, very instrumental in helping us put this show together. And Frank, we were talking before we came on the air. I caught one thing, and I was going to say something. I thought, I'll just wait. You talked about where everybody was from, and we're coming to you from all over the place tonight. I personally am in Bridgeport, Ohio. Frank is in Michigan. Our special guest is in Irving, Texas, and of course, Mike down in the Kanawha Valley. And so we're spread out all over the place tonight. But I noticed that you said, in the summer you're in Michigan. You go down to Fort Myers, Florida in the wintertime when it gets cold. And I thought to myself, well, I'm in Bridgeport, Ohio, and Morgantown, and when it gets cold up here, I just go inside because I don't have anywhere else to go. So I stay in the wintertime. Anyway, we got a fantastic guest tonight. I think it's going to be a great show. And I know, Frank, we've talked a lot about it here in this past week about the importance of this and how exciting it is should be for Mountaineer fans. And but we've got a premier person in the Hall of Fame, the NCAA Hall of Fame, Football Hall of Fame with us. And we've got a few players that, of course, are going to be up for being put in, and we're excited to talk to her about that. So I'll let you talk a little bit about that if you want before we bring her on.
Well, yeah, this is a show I've really looked forward to. I look forward to every single one. But, the season is great around the corner. Coach Brown, by the way, did a great job at the Big 12 meetings today. If you have a chance, go on YouTube or Facebook. If you get the feed from WVU Sports, John Antonic, or Gold and Blue Sports, Blue and Gold Sports, and you'll see what a great job he did. WVU well represented by him and 4 players, including Sean Martin and, of course, Garrett Green, our quarterback. But, as you know, and we both love WVU history, the wonderful thing about the National Football Hall of Fame and the National Football Foundation, it's a constant reminder of the great players who paved the way and participated in the great game back then, who are now being acknowledged for their greatness. Right. And we try to acknowledge that on this show. It's one of the fun pieces of it. So having Hillary Jeffries with us tonight, who's the face of the Hall of Fame, she really oversees it. It's just a real treat. And as you mentioned, Mike Dunlap, who at one time was the West Virginia state chair of the National Football Foundation, is here with us. He's going to join us after a long power outage in West Virginia. So we're looking forward to having him with us too.
Yeah. And, Frank, we were talking a little bit with Hillary before we came on the air, and, I've already learned something that I had no idea about. And she's going to talk about some of this stuff here later on about the Hall of Fame. I know people always have questions. Why is this person not in? How did this person get in, et cetera, et cetera. She's going to answer those questions for us and tell us how it all works. And I think it's awesome knowledge. And everybody that, enjoys college football needs to pay attention to it and listen and understand how this whole process works. And they'll probably get the answers to a lot of questions that they have in their mind about it. And but and we talked about this. It really doesn't seem to be at the forefront of people's minds in West Virginia, the college football. As much as we love college football in the state with the Mountaineers and the Thundering Herd, you don't hear a lot of talk about it, or a lot of clapback about it, about who's not in, who's in, et cetera, et cetera. And it's kind of odd because, we are huge fans, and we've had some tremendous football players come through WVU. And it surprises me that there's not more of a discussion about it.
Yeah, it's one of the things I learned when you were a big part of this, when we went around the state promoting the book on the 1966 to 70 Mountaineers.
Yep.
There was really, I don't want to use the word uneven, but as you might expect, the big question for most fans is, how are we going to do this year?
Right.
This year in the season. And so I think looking back, and yet when you look at the names of the people who have been the players and coaches who are in the National College Football Hall of Fame, people like going way back to way back, and then more currently, like we have Coach Nealon, Bobby Bowden, people like that, Daryl Talley.
Yep.
We've had Daryl on the show.
Yeah.
And so it's and I think that's one of the functions we serve,
right,
is to make sure it can be a both and, not an either or. It's not just looking at what are the Mountaineers going to do in 24, but how did they do in 74 and 64 and 54? So anyway.
And we've had a lot of discussion about the importance of those years and in the building of the program and the history of the program and how important it is. And, I think more people are taking note of that, as this conference realignment stuff hits and people get worried about, where we're going to be and all those things. When you start looking back at the history, you think, man, we're pretty ingrained in the landscape, and we're going to be just fine when it all comes out. So I think it's important to keep that conversation going. Anyway, without further ado, now I want to read some of this bio. I'm not going to read it all because I don't want to take the whole show up with reading all her accolades. So I'm just going to read part of her bio so you'll know who she is. One of the most high-powered and important females in college football, as the director of special projects at the National Football Foundation and College Hall of Fame Incorporated. Her baby, of course, is the College Football Hall of Fame. She's been there for 13 years. She started as an intern. She moved up part-time and has worked her way into the current position that she has. She's one of the two females from Washington Greene County area up here in the northern parts to hold a significant position in college football. And we are absolutely thrilled to have with us tonight Miss Hillary Jeffries of the College Football Hall of Fame. There she is, magically appeared. Hi, Hillary. How are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
All right. It's so great to have you. Yep. So great to have you. So excited to hear more about this. And I'm sure you heard before the show even started, we learned some information, which I thought, here we go. All right, I learned something. I haven't even got on the air yet. So before we delve into any more specifics, when you we were talking before, and I want you to go ahead and talk about this now to get it up front. What qualifies, or what does a person have to do to qualify to be in the College Hall of Fame? We specifically talked about former Mountaineer quarterback who was probably one of the greatest college quarterbacks ever, but he's not in and not nominated or anything like that. There's a reason why. So I'd like for you to explain that process a little bit, what some of the credentials are that you have to have in order to at least get recognized.
Of course. Well, first off, thanks again so much for having me, guys. I really do appreciate it. And anytime I can get a chance to talk Mountaineer football, I'm on board. I'm a two-time WVU graduate, so nothing better than being back and talking about all things, Mountaineers. So thanks again for having me. But as far as the criteria goes, a lot of people don't realize just how nuanced the process is. For players, you have to, first and foremost, you have to be a first team All-American by an NCAA recognized publication. Now, as we all know, since we're football fans, every publication on earth now has an All-America team. But these have to be specifically ones that are recognized by the NCAA. Right now, I think there's 6 selectors that are recognized. It's 5 or 6 selectors, AP, Football Coaches Association, Walter Camp, Sporting News. I know I'm leaving some out here, but so the ones that have been around and been established for a long period of time. Players also have to be out of college 10 full seasons, and they have to be retired from the professional ranks. We do take into consideration, citizenship and stuff like that. Are they good people in society? We take that under evaluation as well. And also, I think one of the biggest things that people don't realize is that players and coaches have to be nominated by the school or by a chapter of the National Football Foundation. So a lot of times when I'm getting a lot of, hey, why isn't so-and-so into the Hall of Fame? And I'm like, the school hasn't nominated him. It's not me.
Right. Well, there's something else we learned. The school has to do nominations.
Exactly.
I was going to ask that.
And then for coaches, coaches have to have at least a 60% winning percentage and have won at least 100 games. They have to be out of coaching for at least 3 full seasons. Or if they're at least 70 years old, they can automatically qualify for induction as soon as they retire. I see you smiling, Frank. I know you're.
Well, I voted for Nick Saban this year. That's how. And I wondered, I'm glad you brought that up. Good question too to ask, Greg.
Another one of West Virginia's finest, right?
That's right.
How did, Mononga's Marion County. But I said, how did Nick get on the ballot so quickly? And I didn't know. And you've mentioned it because he's over 70.
Yes. And then if you're 75 years or older, you can go in as an active coach. And there's only been 4 all-time, one of which being Bobby Bowden. So, the other one was Joe Paterno, and then Bill Snyder from Kansas State, and John Gagliardi, who was a great longtime coach in the divisional ranks.
Yeah. A little story about Nick Saban. When I was at Michigan State, part of the time, he was the head coach at Michigan State before he left for LSU and then Miami. And I was invited to be a mentor for the football team. And so I did not know Nick Saban. He had nothing to do about my being nominated. At any rate, I was a mentor to one of the offensive linemen. So he said, well, I got an invitation, come to dinner. Okay, meet your player that you're going to mentor and also meet Coach Saban. We got there about the same time. I was an academic for almost 40 years. And there Nick Saban comes in, young Nick Saban, carrying a book. And I met him. I said, pleasure to meet you, Coach Saban. And he showed me the book that he was reading at the time. And it was a book on leadership. And I said, boy, this is the kind of coach I can get behind as an academic. He's reading a book. He says, I'm going to have them read it too.
I'm kind of a stats geek, and I'm such a nerd when it comes to football records and stuff like that. And when you look at Coach Saban's resume, it's truly mind-blowing. Like, to have an 80% winning percentage and almost 30 years of coaching major college football is just, it's insane.
Yep. It's unreal. We I kind of jumped the gun just a little bit with the questions there. I wanted to get that out front though about how people get nominated and what some of the criteria are. I know folks would like to hear from you about how this all started. Where talk about when you were in high school and then went on to college and what happened there, and then how you eventually ended up where you're at today. I know people will be interested in that backstory.
Yeah, sure. I actually grew up just over the border in southwestern Pennsylvania in a very, very small town. And, it's literally only like 8 miles from the West Virginia border. I'm still a little irritated that I had to pay out-of-state tuition, but we'll let that one go. But anyway, in small towns, football is everything. Friday Night Lights is everywhere, not just, here in Texas. And so Friday nights, it was, high school football. Saturday, it was watching the Mountaineers. My mom, my grandma, both also WVU grads. So WVU has always kind of been in my blood. And and then of course, Steeler Sundays. And so it was just, football was the entertainment. And, my dad had 2 daughters and I just kind of became the son he never had. So I was the one sitting there with him watching the games. And, I was laughing. I ran into, we have a Hall of Fame golf tournament every year in Atlanta. And I was talking to Charlie Ward, the great Florida State quarterback. And I can remember, and it was funny how this memory just kind of popped up in my head, how when I was like, I think I was like, I don't know, 11 or 12 years old when Charlie was on those great Florida State teams. And, you know, my friends being like really annoyed with me because everyone wanted to go to the mall. And I was like, no, Florida State and Miami are playing. Like, and it was weird because, you know, there I am, this 11, 12-year-old girl, and, you know, that's what I wanted to do. So yeah, football has just always been something I loved so much. And when I wanted to go to school, I originally wanted to do broadcast journalism. I wanted to be a sideline reporter. And honestly, though, I kind of realized I was way more comfortable behind the scenes than I was in front of a camera all the time. And so I still want to be involved in sports in some way. And so worked some odd jobs and eventually managed to find my way back to Morgantown and got my master's in sport management. And, you know, the rest is kind of history after that. I had to complete an internship to complete my master's program, and it ended up being with the NFF. At the time, they were located in New Jersey, so it seemed pretty reasonable, you know, to do that for a couple months. And, you know, a 3-month internship with the National Football Foundation has now turned into about, I think, almost 19 years total. So wow. Here I am.
Wow, fantastic. I always, when I have folks, of course, I run into this a lot, being in Morgantown and up here. When you said Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, so you know how we feel about Pittsburgh Steelers. So
wait, hold on,
that was always so tough.
Right, I got something for you.
Here we go. Terrible towel. Terrible towel. I think I read somewhere where you had that terrible towel on the back of your seat. So I'll have to send her a hat or something to wear on the Browns hat. So you obviously you've been there for a long time. What are your responsibilities? What's your role? What exactly do you do?
Well, kind of like what you were saying at the top of the show, you know, first and foremost, my baby is the College Football Hall of Fame process. So I handle all things from starting with the nominations, vetting all of the candidates, and then working directly with all of our selection committees and overseeing the voting process from start to finish. And then I've just kind of become the principal liaison for all of the Hall of Fame inductees. So from the time they're inducted to, you know, anybody now, if they need something, they know they can come to me and I'll be able to help them out with anything. And, you know, I love getting those texts from the guys or, you know, I exchanged Christmas cards with some of them still to this day. And so that's really the best part, you know, the kind of the fellowship that you build with these guys. And it's kind of awesome to see that side of them, because so many people just, you know, only see the, you know, there's like the fandom that surrounds them, you know, but when you get to see the real humanity in all of them, it's a great thing. So that's first and foremost my baby. The second part is I actually run our scholarship program, and the National Scholar Athlete Awards have been around since 1959. We were actually one of the first initiatives in history to recognize football players for both their academic and their athletic pursuits. And, you know, each year we give away about $250,000 in postgraduate scholarships to the top senior players in the country. We've been very lucky since I've been around. We're just coming off where we honored Zach Frazier in December. And, you know, what a great story he's been, you know, phenomenal college career. You know, second round draft pick, right? To my Steelers.
Yep. And I'll be rooting for him. I'll do it like this. Come on.
But we had Sean Mahone as well a couple years ago. Reed Williams from back in the day. He was recognized as a NFF National Scholar Athlete. And what's awesome is that we are soliciting every single football playing school in the country. So 770 plus. They can send in one nominee, And the fact that these guys are getting selected from a pool of that large shows how special they are. And it also shows that there are football players that are doing things right. And that's everything that the National Football Foundation tries to do, is promote the good in the game, and showcase all of the character building attributes that come from playing football and being involved in the sport.
Yeah, I don't know if this has an impact or not, but I'm curious to know, with the new NIL thing going on, the transfer portal and all that, if you have a player that, is good enough to be in the College Football Hall of Fame, chances are they're not going to be there for their senior year, in a lot of cases. How has that affected you guys in I wouldn't say the quality, but maybe in the number of people that you get nominated and that sort of thing? I'm just curious to know how, because players are moving around so much and going different places and going out early and that sort of thing. Is that created any issues for you guys?
Not really. I think we find that the caliber of the guys who are being nominated for the Scholar Athlete Awards are the guys who are staying in school. And, we've had people, we have tweaked our criteria a bit through the years. It used to just be hard and fast, where it had to be their senior and their final year of eligibility. But now for Scholar Athlete Awards, you guys know how it is. You have players who are already working on master's degrees, by their third or fourth year or whatever. So as long as you have your undergraduate degree already in hand, you can be nominated for the award. So we've had some great, Bo Nix was our big winner last year. And we all know what kind of great career that he had, between Auburn and Oregon. And, he was already working on his second degree. And, those are the stories that we want to tell.
The process then starts off with the nomination, or the school nominates the player, correct? And then it goes through a process of voting. And you mentioned earlier that there were several layers to that. Talk about that just a little bit, if you will.
Well, were you referencing? So I was just talking about earlier. I was talking about the Hall of Fame process, and then this was just for the Scholar Athlete Awards, which are two very different processes. So, did you want me to circle back to the Hall of Fame process?
Or, yes.
Okay.
Yep. We can do both. We want Frank to cringe over about the academic part of it. So
no,
both of them.
Yeah, College Hall of Fame.
Well, with the Hall of Fame, I appreciate any time that I can actually talk about the process in depth, because it's something that people don't necessarily care to understand. Right. I don't know why that is, but it starts with, as we had talked about earlier, Greg, how you said you didn't realize that they had to be nominated by the school. Right. And so that's a very key part of all of this, because, we take a lot of flack for people. I'll tell you a funny story. It was every year when the ballot would come out, I was just getting hammered about work done every single year. It's like, you idiot, why isn't work done on the ballot? Blah, 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 blah. And so after a couple years, I finally called the SID at Florida State. I'm like, can you please nominate? I'm getting killed. And the good news is, he was on the ballot for a few years. He's going in this year. So I escaped that one.
Yeah.
But anyway, so going back to the process at hand. So once a player is vetted and we realize that he meets all the criteria, all the active players in our nomination pool, which in any given year is probably about 200 to 250 active nominations, all of those players, and this is just for FBS players, by the way, all of those players then get divided up into 8 geographic regions based on where their school is located. So West Virginia players, for instance, are in District 1, which covers like the Northeast from Virginia, West Virginia, and up the Northeast. And then what you have to do from there is be a top vote getter out of that district in order to make the national ballot. And the national ballot, Frank, I know we were just talking, and I'm very proud of you for sending in your votes. So thank you for doing that. So then the ballot comes out. The ballot then gets sent to all of our members nationwide, from our 120 chapters across the country, who then get to vote on the College Football Hall of Fame. Once that part closes, those results then get forwarded to our FBS Honors Court, which is chaired by Archie Griffin, who we all know and love as the, two-time Heisman Trophy winner, a member of College Football Hall of Fame. That committee is comprised of about 25 people from around the country, whether it be current members of the Hall of Fame, respected media members, former athletics administrators. These are, the creme de la creme of people who know about college football. And we literally sit in a meeting the entire day. We start at 7 a.m. and we sit in there the entire day, and we go through each player that's on that national ballot one at a time. Mm-hmm. And we discuss each one. This is not something that anyone takes lightly. There's thorough and in-depth discussion on each one. And we really appreciate that dialogue because it helps us, really get through the nuts and bolts of things. And, we don't release the names of all the committee members just so they can avoid solicitation and stuff like that. But I always say, I almost wish we could sell tickets to that event because and for me, especially, sometimes I have to pinch myself that I'm sitting in that room because, and hearing these guys talk, whether they played against, these players or coached against these players or what have you, it's such a privilege to be in that room, to listen to the stories. There's usually a couple fun, maybe inappropriate stories exchanged. But those are all top secret. But it's such a great process. Yep. And we can circle back and kind of talk what we were talking about before the show. I know Pat White is at the forefront of every Mountaineer, and hoping that one day he will get in. And I know it's a sore subject, and for me as well, especially since as a WVU alumni and a fan in general, he means a lot to Mountaineer Nation. He means a lot to the sport, so I get it. But I'm also here to respect the integrity of our process, and so. The good thing is every year when we all come together, we sit down and we discuss the criteria again. And we try to sit there and say, hey, is this the best process that we have in place right now? Is there anything that we can do to change that? But also, how do we do that without opening Pandora's box? Because at the same time, a Hall of Fame is meant to be special. A Hall of Fame is meant to recognize the best of the best. So how can we do this while still, again, respecting the integrity of the process?
Yeah. So you can see Timothy Green's question up there. And that's a question I mentioned before the show I've gotten. Well, why is Steve Slaton on the because Steve and Pat played for 3 years together. It's because Pat was never named, believe it or not, a first-team All-America by any of those certified groups. You go back and watch films of Pat White, it's incredulous that he wasn't, but he wasn't. And that's why he can't be, Timothy, that's why he can't be on the Hall ballot and why Steve Slaton is on the ballot this year. We have another question. Actually, we'll bring Mike Dunlap in here in a second as I turn this off. And you have a question too. You have a question too, Mike, about the history.
Yeah, and I should know this, but Hillary will know. Tell them, Hillary, who founded the National Football Foundation.
Sure. It was founded in 1947 by General Douglas MacArthur, Grantland Rice, the great famed sports writer, and Red Blake, who was the Army coach. So they founded the organization because they even knew back then. It's funny because when we go back and we look at all of the some of the statements and everything that they put out, they're as true now as they were then about what football can do for people, and the character building attributes of the game and the teamwork, and how much it really develops our youth. And they believed it then, and we still believe it now, and try to continue to carry on that mission that they started 70 some years ago. So
Oh, interesting.
Impressive.
I know we've got a few Mountaineers nominated, and I know there's not a whole lot you can delve into about that, but just share what you can about our nominees this year. Steve Slaton, of course, Coach Carlen and Aaron Beasley are all up for induction for the Hall of Fame. And again, I know you can't say a whole lot on that. But what can you say about it?
This is a good chart you've got here. I might have to steal this for our selection meeting. I don't know.
There you go.
Well,
you can be real smart walking there with some of this stuff. That's there's academics for you.
Well, but please, I have to say, especially after written a book about Jim Carlen, can you spell his name right? I misspelled his name. Mea culpa. It's E-N, not I-N. So
Frank, no one would have noticed that but
you. Man.
You're the only one that noticed that.
I did it. My mistake.
Well, it seems like Frank might be the resident expert on Coach Carlen and his career. With Coach Carlen, I think he's someone that maybe isn't like necessarily a household name. But what he did at WVU set a groundwork for a lot of future success. That's for sure. And so I think he was only in Morgantown for what, 4 years.
Yeah.
But he hired Bobby Bowden, and certainly what he did at Texas Tech, South Carolina, was very deserving. And obviously he meets all the criteria for induction. But I don't know, Frank, again, you're the expert probably, and are closer to Coach Carlen than I am. So if there's anything you want to add, by all means.
Well, I think, the interesting thing, you're absolutely correct, is and as time goes on, fewer and fewer people really know about him, because I think he retired like in the early 80s as AD and head coach at South Carolina. But one of the things I think that distinguishes Jim Carlen, and I don't think people realize how difficult this is, because when you move as a major college coach from one school to another, and he did it twice. I mean, when he went to West Virginia, he had not been a major head coach. He hadn't been a head coach at all. So he was starting fresh at West Virginia, did very well here. Then he went to Texas Tech, and it's starting over again, and then went to South Carolina, and he was successful at all three places. And also he had a Heisman winner in Rogers, George Rogers at South Carolina, and just was an outstanding coach. And so I think that's some of the things that go into why Jim has been on the ballot before, and he is this year.
Right.
Hillary, let me ask you this.
Sure.
The coaching criteria, isn't it also 10 seasons minimum? And guys like Bob Pruitt that meet all the other criteria, and Irk Russell are not eligible because they only coached 9 years.
I think Irk actually coached less than that, but you are correct. So the minimum is 10 years, and that is certainly not devaluing anything that they've done. But again, the point of the Hall of Fame is to celebrate longevity and success over long periods of time at one place. And now certainly their careers were outstanding. And we know that, Bobby Pruitt had great success with, the Randy Moss, Chad Pennington teams at Marshall, and, Irk, what he did at Georgia Southern was nothing short of spectacular. And so nothing of what I'm saying is to, of course, underestimate in any way all the great things that they did at their respective institutions. But, again, we have to have systems in place. There have to be things to qualify a Hall of Fame nominee. And so that is the case with the 10-year rule.
Yeah, like you say, it's the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Pretty Good.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Hillary, if you
I can tell you from experience too, and I sorry to interrupt you, Frank, but when I was still coaching in high school, we decided at our high school we were going to set up a Hall of Fame for the high school. And so we had meeting with coaches and other folks, probably 10 of us together, trying to settle on the criteria and get everything figured out how we were going to do it. What an enormous task that was. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Hats off to whoever come up with the criteria and it goes by it because it's tough. That's a hard thing to do because, you end up with people like Pat White and, you look at him and you think, he's very worthy. But at the same time, there are criteria that you have to meet. So that's just that's what makes it special. So
that's right.
And Greg, you also with that to be on the wall at West Virginia and have your number retired, you have to be a member of the College Football Hall of Fame.
Right.
Yeah.
So that leaves Pat and them guys out too.
Yeah.
Right. Yep.
Hillary, if you can continue talking about the other two. We've got a short video here. Starts with Carlen, but it quickly gets into Aaron and then Slaton. And, watching these videos again just reminded me of how great these guys are. They would just so here's the video. It starts with a summary of we did a show about Coach Carlen, as we mentioned to you earlier, and we're very lucky and pleased to have one of his players with us, and also his daughter, and so it's going to move there. And here he is with some of the Mountaineer greats, and that's the show we did with Molly Ann Carlen Elliott, his daughter. But we'll now move into. I'll stop here. That's George Rogers. We're going to go into the Aaron Beasley shots, and then to Steve Slaton. So talk a bit about those two.
Sure. Aaron, we all know as part of the wonderful 1993 Mountaineer teams, leader of the defense, just such a dynamic player. I believe he was actually a 2-time All-American, but only 1 year as a first-team All-American. But people forget, just how impressive it is to also be, a second-team All-American as well. So I think he was nominated in 2019. And, Aaron actually is an automatic holdover from last year, which is exciting. What that means is that he received a decent amount of votes in the final selection meeting last year. So he actually didn't have to go through the district process this year. He automatically went straight to the ballot this year. So I think that's, a good sign that people are giving him a good look when he's in this selection meeting. And so we'll hope for the best on Bees. As far as Steve goes, this is his first year nominated. I think people really grossly underestimate how hard it is to make the ballot on your first year. Unanimous first team All-American, talk about things coming like full circle and everything. What's really cool is the first event that I ever represented the NFF at was actually at Don Nealon's on-campus salute the year that he got into the Hall of Fame. They honored him on campus in 2005. And that was that kind of Steve Slaton coming out party with the 6 TDs against Louisville. Wow. And I will never forget that. That actually, if you see the stadium in the background, that photo was taken from that game. And wow. I will never forget that. And it was just the coolest thing ever for me. And so, he was so exciting to watch. He and Pat were just such, I think I just saw recently they were named like the 3rd greatest, duo in the history of college football. And, how special was that for us as Mountaineer fans to watch that? And, just a dynamic player and by all accounts, a great person as well. So we'll hope the best, for Aaron Beasley, for Steve Slaton, and for Coach Carlen. Mike Compton, Brian Joswiak, and Dan Moses have also been nominated and are actively going through the process as well. And so we're just excited that we have 2 Mountaineer players and a coach on the ballot this year, and we'll keep our fingers crossed for the 2025 class.
Yeah, the interesting thing about we always do research. before we have a guest on and the topic. And it's amazing. Greg and I talk about this all the time, about how much we learn. And what was interesting, and I didn't know this, God, when I went back and looked at Pat White and Steve Slaton, who played together for 3 years together.
Mm-hmm.
Pat White was there for 4. They amassed 14,000 yards.
Yep.
And the other thing is that neither of them probably should have come to Morgantown. Pat White wanted to go to LSU, but they wanted him to play wideout.
Right.
West Virginia said, let's do quarterback. And what was interesting, and I couldn't believe this when I read it, is that Steve Slaton wanted to go to Maryland. You may have heard this story, Mike and Greg, but they overcommitted the number of running backs. And so one of the assistant coaches had to tell him that, sorry, we've pulled your scholarship. Well, that assistant coach was James Franklin, who's now the head coach at Penn State.
Yep.
And so the story goes that, what do I do now? Well, I'm going to go to a school that plays Maryland a lot, and I'm going to beat their ass.
Yeah.
Maybe we should send James Franklin a fruit basket or something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we should.
Exactly.
Hey, Frank, a couple stories going back to those two. I'll never forget. Of course, I'd never heard of Pat White. My brother lives in Hoover, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
They had, good football program, and they were playing at Daphne, whatever his high school was. And he called me and he said, man, I am watching this guy from Daphne play quarterback. He is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I've heard that he may end up going to WVU because he wants to be a quarterback. Nobody else wants him as a quarterback. He said, I'm telling you right now, this guy is awesome. Of course, you see what happened. I went and I was watching the video you were showing there of the Pitt West Virginia game. I went to that game up at Pittsburgh. Of course, nobody back then. Nobody went to Pitt games, so we were sitting right down on the field. I've been to a lot of college football games, but sitting down there close and watching those two guys was absolutely unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. And I mean, the speed and quickness and just everything they did, even in warm-ups, you just watched them. You're like, my gosh, these guys are phenomenal. Yeah. And so that's my plug for Steve to get in, because he was some kind of a player. Question about it.
Yeah, no question about it.
I think one of the biggest things that kind of amaze people too is when we tell them just like the breadth of, statistically speaking, it is the College Football Hall of Fame is the hardest Hall of Fame to get into just from playing the numbers game. Right. So there have been 5.6 million players who have ever played the game of college football. And there's only 1,300 players and coaches in the College Football Hall of Fame. That's 0.02%. Right. And so it's kind of mind blowing. And that's why we say this is so special and why this is truly the best of the best, and why we take this process so seriously. And, obviously, I mean, I know, again, going back to the Pat White thing, we know it's a sensitive subject with Mountaineer fans and everything, but, we want to respect the integrity of the process, and, hopefully there will be some way that we can work that out in the future, because we know how special he is, in college football history. And I think he was like the first quarterback to win 4 bowls in a row, if I recall correctly.
Right. That's right.
And, and I will put him in the Hall of Fame just based on the video of him growling at the Pitt game. That might be one of my favorite things ever.
Hillary, I wanted to ask a question that's related to this visual up here. Sure. First of all, you can see that it really is a select group of West Virginia folks, pretty much equal between, of course, Greasy Neal was both a player and a coach, could have gone in both categories. But, Sam Huff, Bruce, and Major Harris and Darryl Talley are already in. But what's interesting is on that coaching list, many people don't know the name Chuck Clausing. Greg and I did a show with Chuck's son. Chuck was an associate head coach because Bobby Bowden wanted a person with experience being his number 2 person when he was promoted to head coach in 1970. But Chuck didn't make the Hall of Fame based on the job at West Virginia. he made it because he had such a great career at other schools, including Carnegie Mellon and Indiana University. And the same thing for Frank Signetti, who did not have a winning record at West Virginia, but is in the Hall. So that's one of the things, two of the things I like about the Hall is, unlike the Naismith Hall of Fame, you wait until people retire before they're in. I mean, there are a number of folks in the Naismith Hall of Fame who put their teams on probation because of their misdeeds. That just wouldn't happen with the Football Hall. But talk a bit about, the second thing is talk a bit about, I don't want to use jargon, but sort of the stratified nature of the Hall, so that someone like a Chuck Clausing and a Frank Signetti can be really successful at a, I don't want to say lower level, but a non-D1 level, and still get in the Hall because they're both in.
Right. I mean, and that's something that we're very proud of. You know, we realize that college football isn't just about, you know, the blue bloods. It's not just about Ohio State, Michigan, you know, the ones that everyone, you know, the Texases and all that stuff. You know, obviously we're biased, West Virginia, of course, you know, but you know, it's about all the small towns and all of the small colleges around the country as well. And we want to let them know that we're looking out for them too. And, you know, we have a great divisional college football Hall of Fame process as well. And, you know, it's very important to us, you know, during a time when, you know, there's so much uncertainty in the college football landscape. Let's just be honest, you know, that we let all schools, no matter the level that they're playing at, that we let all of them know that we're looking out for them. We're recognizing the good that they're doing. And we want those players and coaches to know that as well. We had a great inductee a couple years ago from California, Pennsylvania, and John Luckhart, and Washington W&J. You know, he would tell me all these stories about how Don Nealon would help him out and, you know, whenever he could. And, you know, we love getting those players from the divisional ranks and coaches from the divisional ranks because, you know, arguably you could even say too, a lot of those guys aren't on scholarships. They're not, you know, they're playing for the absolute love of the game. You know, they're going to school on their own dimes and they're doing this for the love of the sport. And so, you know, we want to recognize that and acknowledge them for that as well.
Yeah. And here's one of those, talking about you living the dream. Here's you with Jim Tressel, and people remember Jim Tressel from Ohio State, but he was a phenomenal multinational championship winner at Youngstown State.
That's right. My cousin played for him. My cousin Frank Rutherford played for him at Youngstown State.
Wow.
Awesome.
He's a great guy. Wonderful guy.
Hey, Frank, I noticed on one of the graphics you put up, there was a, down in the left-hand corner in the bottom, there was a small snippet there of membership.
Sure.
If somebody want to join, won't you mention that and talk about that just a little bit so people will know?
Yep. We can put it right up here. Actually, the deadline is passed when it says you can vote for the nominees. If I'm correct, help me if I am, Hillary, I think that deadline was Monday, that people could vote like me once you're a member of the Hall of Fame, which is $60 a year. Then you get a ballot. And I think that deadline just passed. But that's something to remember. And we put that information up there a couple of weeks ago. And there's the website again where you can join. And that allows you to vote next year. It's an advisory vote. Let's not kid ourselves. It's an advisory vote. We're not on the committee. You're not on the committee, but you have a chance to express yourself.
But know too that the committee does take the voting seriously from the public. The reason why it can't always be, you know, it can't be the end all be all is because it's easy to vote for, you know, the players who had huge professional careers that are the household names. Yeah. And we want people to know that it's not about that. This is the College Football Hall of Fame for a reason. We're looking at the best college players. You know, a lot of people don't realize, like, people will call Tom Brady the GOAT. Tom will never be in the College Football Hall of Fame. He was not a first team All-American in college. And so your professional career has nothing to do with it, but we also recognize the fact that it's easy for people to vote for people who had the big, pro careers as well. So that's why the committee will take those votes very seriously when they're looking and evaluating everything, but it can't necessarily be the end all be all.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that Mike Dunlap was responsible for the state of West Virginia. For how long, Mike, were you state director?
It was a couple of years, Frank, and it was a bad time for me. I was sick. My wife was sick, and it was a struggle, but I enjoyed it. Would do it again today. But it's so important. And I think Hillary will agree to you on this, that I kind of pushed the envelope a little bit in the state of West Virginia. And he got some people upset over some things, but I was trying to build that chapter. And it goes back to, like I said, about the banquet. We had a gentleman that stepped up and said, I will pay all coaches memberships into the Hall of Fame. I think it was $40 then.
Probably, yeah.
$40 a pop for the whole staff. We didn't have one taker. I take that back. We had one school. We had one high school, about 8 guys, and they were from up north somewhere. And the mentality of the high school coaches has to change. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I believe in it. Again, through we helped raise over $50,000 for St. Jude's in a golf tournament. So we did some good things. But I was sick then. Didn't realize it, but I give them all. Like I say, I pushed the envelope, didn't I, Hillary?
Sure did. We love you for it. But I think, it's important. Obviously, the voting for the College Football Hall of Fame is obviously, something that grabs people's attention, and that's very appealing. But that's not the only reason that we want people to join. If you believe in football, if you were a former coach, if you were a former player, this is an organization for you. And it's an opportunity also for you to give back to the game. Kind of one of the things that one of our mottos is that we, preserve the past, promote the present, prepare for the future of the game, and we protect it through all of our initiatives.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do here. And that's what the chapters do on a grassroots level. And that's why we find that, our organization, I know I'm biased, but that's why our organization is really important.
Yeah, those state chapters are important. You sent us a number of pictures. Before you get away, we want to go through those, and we appreciate it. And just talk about these pictures, these photos. We'll start with a familiar face. Multiple familiar faces. Yeah. And Don Nealon.
And Coach Nealon. This is when, in 2011, when Darryl was getting inducted. This is a tradition. So when you see these on-field photos, every year when we announce the Hall of Fame class, a representative from the National Football Foundation will actually go to that player's alma mater and present a plaque on campus for the school to keep as well. So this was the event that we were having for Darryl back in 2011, and we were so glad to have Coach Nealon with us as well. Coach had one in 2005, but I didn't have any photos from that one for some reason, or I would have sent that one as well.
There you go. And for those, there's a big push again for Darryl to get into another Hall of Fame, which is the Pro Football Hall of Fame. His pro stats are spectacular, as are his college stats. That's coming up this Saturday. It's open. There's a cash bar, free appetizers up at Kegler Sports Bar, lower level in the clubhouse, this Saturday at 8 p.m. So that's a plug for those who want to support Darryl's, another push for Darryl getting into the Pro Hall of Fame. And go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. It was really cool when Darryl got inducted. Bruce Smith was there. Cornelius Bennett, Thurman Thomas, Leonard Smith, all the guys from those great Bills teams were there. And it's such a brotherhood. I mean, and that speaks to football just again in general, the brotherhood that is formed and the fraternity that you have. But and Daryl's just an awesome guy. I loved being around him.
That's right. Here you are with an administrator, Mike Montero.
That was at this past year's annual awards dinner in Las Vegas. He was there with Zach Frazier. Like I said, Zach was one of our scholar athletes, so recognized for his great work on and off the field. And so Mike was there with Zach and his family.
Great. And here's, was that this year or last year?
That was the 2023 dinner, back in December. So this is right as things were getting started and people were kind of milling into the ballroom. And, so all the kind of electronic flags that you see up there, we're paying homage to all of our honorees that night. And we get about 2,000 people every year. We like to say that this is the place to be in college football. You will see coaches, athletics directors, bowl representatives, commissioners from all around the country at our awards dinner.
This is a Big 12 gathering.
A couple years ago. I always selfishly say that the Mountaineers joined the Big 12 so I could see them play more often, being down here in Dallas now. So it's been fun to go to the Big 12 and see all the players at media days. Didn't get to do it this year since they moved it to Vegas, but.
Yeah. And here's staying with the Big 12's theme. I don't know why it's not coming up. Let me see. There it is. Took a little delay there. Kansas State with the great Bill Snyder.
Yes, this was just last season when Kansas State quarterback Michael Bishop got inducted, and Coach Snyder came along as well. And so it was great. It's my first time in to visit Kansas State. What a great fan base, great people. Just really good time being on campus there.
Yeah, great. And here's one with, what did you describe that? With Sean?
Yeah, that was Sean Mahone, who was our scholar athlete from WVU a couple years ago. And again, anytime there's a Mountaineer around, I got to show him some love. So Sean's a great kid, or I should say young man. I'm so proud of our Mountaineers who come with these great GPAs. They're doing it right on and off the football field. And so that was at our awards dinner when he was recognized.
That's terrific. And then a very personal photo with Maya and Bryson.
Maya and Bryson. Those are my two godchildren. They are the daughter and son of Brian Washington, who played for the Mountaineers in the early 90s, on those same teams with Beasley. And my best friend, Mandy. And so I'm both of their godmother, and the gentlemen on the ends are their respective godfathers, and that's Alonzo Washington and Bernardo Amerson, who also played for the Mountaineers.
Isn't that
so
great?
We just have Mountaineer bloodlines through and through.
Awesome. Tremendous. And then what's amazing is when you sent this to us, I didn't realize there was a connection to my life. That was taken a long time ago. I'm going to say, oh boy, must be at least 12 years ago. Bill Beekman, the fellow to the far left, was the acting athletic director at the time. He's clapping on the far left.
Right.
And that's Lorenzo White, the great Lorenzo White, who was a great running back at Michigan State under the late George Perlis. And if you look at the bottom of Lorenzo, you will notice he has huge feet, 17 or 18 feet. So the day before this, I just happened to be out with a buddy in East Lansing, Pete Kakala, who played lineman for the great Duffy Doherty in those superb 1960 teams. And he's still part of the alumni. And we're sitting at a table at a bar. And this big guy could barely get through the door, walks in, and Pete looks to me and said, "That's Lorenzo White." And so he said, do you want to meet him? And I said, sure, I want to meet him. Well, I went over to him. I almost crooked my neck to be able to look at him. But the interesting thing about that, I couldn't take my eyes off his feet because they were so big. And I said, Lorenzo, I tell you, those are the biggest feet I've ever seen. I mean, I sounded like a 7-year-old kid. And so he started dancing around a little bit. So I said, Lorenzo, would you mind if I take a photo of your feet? I want to bring this home to my wife and Kathy and show her your feet. And he looked at me, got a big grin. And so I got a close up. And I did bring it home and showed it to her. She said, I've never seen feet like that. The sad thing about it is, a couple of months later, I left my phone out outside overnight, and there was a rainstorm, and it had not synced up to the cloud, and I lost the picture of Lorenzo White's feet. And I was going to put that in my study, but I can't do it. But I thank you for that. That's a great Spartan, just a phenomenal running back. My God,
Frank, you bring up the shoes. Let me tell you something we did as a chapter. We had a kid come to us that needed a size 22 shoe.
Wow.
A high school kid. And we reached out to everybody we knew. We had to go to the pros. John Ray, who was a former Mountaineer, played with the Colts, got us hooked up with them, and they provided this young man with a pair of shoes. Size 22. But that was one thing we did as a chapter here in West Virginia.
That's
awesome.
Yeah, and you can't expect the national office to do that. That's why state and national working together makes so much. It's so critical. So thanks for that story, Mike.
That's wonderful, Mike.
Hillary, I want to say too, looking at those pictures of you when your hair was long, you had a striking resemblance to Julie Louise Dreyfus that played on Seinfeld.
Oh, that's one I haven't received before. But
well, with your long hair, looks like a Seinfeld lady. So.
I have a photo of her feet too. That's not true. Not true.
You know what they call it, Frank.
You sound like the guy Rex Ryan, the pro coach.
That's right. Yeah.
It's a foot fetish.
That's right. Yeah, right.
That's funny, Hillary. I tell you what, this has been awesome. So much great information. Can't tell you how much we appreciate you taking some time. We know you're really busy, and we'd love to have you back on sometime to talk more about this, because this is just really, really fascinating.
I'd love to. I've had so much fun with you guys. Thanks so much for reaching out and for having me on, and happy to come back anytime. And hey, maybe next time we'll be talking about one of our guys getting in, right?
There you go.
So
there you go. Yep.
That'll
be the plan. That's right. Thank you very much again. We appreciate all that wonderful information, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take
Mike, appreciate you, buddy, for stepping in and helping us out there a little bit. And as always, putting this guest line up, man. He'll be working for. I was going to say David Letterman. He don't do it anymore, but you'll be working for ESPN before long if you keep it up.
Yeah, I enjoy helping you guys. I really do.
And talk about talking to the mic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we just started a podcast with Chill Sports. It's called Talking to the Mic. It's a play on words. Talk into the mic. Talk into the mic. And we had the show before, done about 70 shows, kind of freelance, but now we're kind of real close to the big time. They had 13 million hits 2 months ago, 10 million last month, and so we're hoping to put together some stuff. We've already had Bobby Pruitt on, and Brian Joserack promoting his show, and I was doing a podcast today with a guy named Jim Strawn. If you're familiar with the Kanawha County, everybody knows Jim. Yep. And the power went out right in the middle of it.
Oh, man.
So we're going to have to redo that. But we've got lots of guys scheduled. Carl Lee, Daryl Talley. Coach Nealon was supposed to be on, but he had computer problems. So it's something I enjoy. And, I don't want to quit helping you guys at all, no matter what goes on. I'm just a phone call away. And, I appreciate you giving me a chance to make that plug.
We appreciate it. We appreciate it. And also, it's dear to all of our hearts. And we're putting up this information Greg and I, that it's not too late to contribute to Joe's Nose Kids. The big weekend is coming up. And so if you want to send a check to Joe's Nose Kids, that's the address, Mount Chateau Road in Morgantown, 26508. Check of any size would be very much appreciated.
Yep.
Aren't they all the same size, Frank?
Pardon?
Aren't they all the same size? If you want to see a good interview, check out my interview on Facebook with Joe Zwack.
Yeah, I saw
talking about the kids.
Yeah.
There's a man with a big heart.
Yep. Yeah. We, of course, we had him on here and had him on my show, and he's a great interview and does great work. And we gladly promote him. So make sure, again, that's coming up this weekend. I think Thursday night is the Coach Nealon roast. And I think he said that might have been, you can still get into that. You pay at the door.
That's right.
And you have dinner and of course, listen to everybody give their Coach Nealon stories. Friday then is the golf tournament. I think he did say that was filled already.
Sold out.
But then on Saturday, they've got the bowling event.
Right.
All the players and former players will be there bowling. And as Joe said, there'll be a lot of banter going back and forth. And you can just go into that. I don't think there's any cost for that to go in and if you want. So
no, that Saturday deal is really a good deal. It's free.
And of course, Daryl Talley's event will be going on the same time or right there at the same after that.
Big news on Saturday in Morgantown.
All right, he's got us chomping at the bit now, Frank. I'm gonna call him at 8:00 Saturday morning. Get out of bed. Say, all right, what's that news?
It may come out before then, but definitely by Saturday.
Awesome. That's
great. Yeah, we wish we could be there, but just didn't work out. But here's the information on next week's show. We've been working on this for a long while. Again, going back to remembering the past. There are only 2, I think, living members who played during the Pappy Lewis era from 1950 to 59 that arguably the crew that put WVU football on the map, because it really wasn't a national name before that. But with Pappy Lewis and Chuck Howley and Bruce and that entire group. And we're going to have one member, Gene Lathy, who's in the WVU Hall of Fame. I think Gene's 89 or 90 now. He's going to be with us next Wednesday night. And we're so pleased and really thank her for helping to put this together, is Jill Underdonk Stevenson, the daughter of the great Bill Underdonk, who was a wonderful lineman back in the day. And we're just looking forward to having them with us next Wednesday night. So that's another show, as we always look forward to it. But join us next week.
Also on the team, Frank, was Freddie Wyant.
That's right.
Sam Huff.
That's right.
So that was a great team. You're right.
Yeah, great. And unfortunately, I think the only other one is, why am I blanking out his name? His name's also Gene. That's terrible. I should have written it down. But I think there are maybe 3 at the most living members of that team with us, and the others, Sam passed away recently, and et cetera, et cetera. And then some of them played later in the decade too, because he was coach for a full decade from 50 to 59. And Pappy Lewis is, my God, he died early. He died in his 40s of a heart attack. So,
and that show fits right into our theme then and now. And we look forward to that. That'll be a lot of fun hearing some of those great stories, I'm sure. Also, Frank, you wanted to mention before we went off the air, the fact that people can get some merchandise nowadays. That's right. And I think me and you are the first 2 buyers. So I've been afraid to try my shirt on yet, so I don't know if it fits. I'm so fat. I can't. I always get new clothes, and I'm like, I don't want to try. There's the shirts. Oh, it looks just like my body there, don't it?
Which one?
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to figure out, which side. There's the T-shirts that you can order. And right there's the way to get them. They're available on there's the website. On that, you go in and
they're very nice T-shirts, and we thank, as always, Joey Foster for helping. He's the one that designed it.
Yep.
And he And so it's not as though we're making money on this, but it's something that you never know. You go to the store and they'll say Mountaineer locker room then and now, and they'll be so excited.
That's right. That's right. There'll
And
be
fans for life.
tripping over each other to get one. That's right. And tripping over each other to get back and watch the show. Yeah.
And thank you,
Kelly. They are pretty nice t-shirts. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah.
Timothy and guys for always, they're always with us. We appreciate those guys as well. Guys, that's going to wrap it up for tonight. Again, another fun show and a very informative show, which is what I like. Learn things that I didn't know before. I'm sure Mike knew a lot of this information, but I was surprised to hear some of it. And I'd often wonder myself why, some people like Pat White weren't in there, and now we know. So that was very informative. She's very well spoken and does a great job. So we appreciate Hillary for being with us.
Real quick, Greg.
Go ahead.
Also, guys, Danny Bugs did not make it on the ballot.
Danny Bugs.
Jim Braxton, two-time All-American, did not. Now they're past the 50 years.
Yeah.
And one of the things I butted heads with, as I said, I pushed the envelope with WVU, was why weren't those guys on the ballot?
Unbelievable.
And, they were putting contemporary guys on there.
Right.
That still had 45 years left.
Yeah.
And so that was I kind of got in hot water over that, but it was worth it.
Oh, yeah. And people our age can remember those guys very well. Danny Bugs was one of the most, unbelievable players to watch ever. Like you said, Jim Braxton had a tremendous career and was a great person, obviously, from people that know him, but talked about him. So, yeah, you wonder sometimes what goes on there. And that's and people want to know. And, of course, they're going to blame folks like Hillary when really they don't have anything to do with that part of it, getting them on there and getting them nominated. So, yeah, that's good stuff to know. And no harm in continuing to remind them, I don't think.
And it's there are always politics involved. Mm-hmm. But, in Braxton's case, it can't be that the university is not supportive because there's a residence hall on campus named after him. And so maybe one of the ways in which schools operate, having been associated with higher education, is you sort of spread the benefits around. But boy, Jim Braxton should be in the hall when you think of the fact that the numbers he put up, but also the fact that he played multiple positions, including people who didn't know him. This guy was a great running back, made All-America as a tight end, switched positions in his senior year, and he was the team's place kicker.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he was the team's place kicker until it really became too much. And one of the issues for him was, you score a touchdown, and all of a sudden you run to the sideline, then you've got to run back on and kick the extra point. It just was becoming too much for him. So
I think back in those days they would tie their shoe back and get that kicking tee and all that stuff. So it wasn't an easy task to pull off.
No, and he was not a soccer style. He was straight on, so he had to change his foot. It's true.
Yeah, that big square toe.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Lou Groza. There you go, Cleveland.
Lou the toe. There you go. Lou the toe. There you go. Brown guy. All right, guys, it's been fun. It's been informative, and it's been a blast. We thank everybody for tuning in tonight. We look forward to coming to you again next Wednesday night with another great show. Make sure you check out Behind the Mic and also Courtside with Coach Chris. We're on there as well. So check those shows out as well. Frank, again, great job putting all this together. Mike, thanks for your help again. As always, appreciate you guys. Have a great evening, everybody. Good night.
Take care.